The wedding bells rang, but in the heart of the billionaire, there was no joy. Jordan Thompson, a man known for his ruthless ambition and untouchable empire, was standing at the altar, marrying a village girl he barely knew, Layla. It wasn't love that had brought them together. It was a secret, a dark secret that could destroy everything he had worked for. The small-town girl, innocent and unaware, was his perfect cover. His heart felt heavy as he looked at her, beautiful, kind, and so unaware of the storm she was walking into. But as the vows were exchanged and the crowd cheered, Jordan could feel the weight of his deception growing heavier with every passing second. The marriage wasn't a union of hearts, it was a shield, a way to silence the rumors about his family's past. No one could know the truth about what happened to his first wife, the scandal that threatened his entire legacy. But as the years went on, Jordan's lie grew more complicated. He didn't expect that the village girl Layla would start to change him, that her warmth and innocence would slowly crack the walls he'd built around his heart. He couldn't help but feel guilty, torn between his past and this new life he was now leading. Then one evening, as Jordan tried to push past the guilt, a quiet, trembling voice broke through his thoughts. "I need to tell you something," Layla whispered, her eyes filled with a storm of emotions. Jordan's heart stopped. Was it the secret he had feared all along? Had she found out about his past? But the words that followed were not what he expected. "I wasn't just a village girl," Layla continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "I married you to escape my own secret." The ground beneath Jordan's feet seemed to crumble as she revealed the truth, a truth that would turn everything he thought he knew upside down. Layla wasn't just running from her humble origins, she was hiding from a past so dark it could ruin them both. The story of how she had become entangled in a dangerous situation, how her life had been threatened by a secret that, if revealed, would expose everything she had worked so hard to keep buried. Now, both of them were trapped in a web of lies, and the tension between them was palpable. What had started as a marriage built on deception was now a ticking time bomb. But as the secrets unraveled, Jordan and Layla found something unexpected, something that neither of them had bargained for. In the midst of their lies, they began to see the possibility of redemption, not just for their pasts, but for their future together. Would they rise above the darkness that surrounded them, or would their secrets tear them apart? The truth was out there, buried deep within the heart of their marriage. And now, as they faced the storm of their pasts together, they would have to decide. Could love truly conquer the lies they had built their lives on? Would redemption be possible? Or was their fate already sealed? The emotional roller coaster had only just begun. Layla's life had always been shaped by simplicity, a world where the little things mattered the most: the scent of the earth after rain, the warmth of a fire on cold nights, and the strength of community. She had never asked for much, never expected the riches or luxuries that others dreamed of. All she wanted was peace, stability, and the chance to live without fear. Growing up in a small village, she had seen the darker side of life: poverty, struggle, and the sacrifices people made to survive. But beneath the hard surface of survival, there was a soft heart, a heart that longed for something greater than survival itself: love. Layla had known nothing but quiet resilience, the kind that came from accepting her place in the world. But she wasn't immune to the cruel twists of fate that sometimes shaped lives. And when a powerful, ruthless billionaire had shown up in her life, offering her a way out, she hadn't known that her escape would come with a price. Layla wasn't just any village girl. Behind her wide, trusting eyes and innocent smile was a soul that had been burdened with secrets she could never share. She wasn't just running to Jordan for protection from her humble roots. She was fleeing a past filled with darkness, an abusive family, a broken engagement with a man whose motives were as dark as his actions, and a reputation that she feared would eventually catch up with her. Her decision to marry Jordan was not one born of love, but of survival. She thought he could offer her safety from the storms of her past. Despite her quiet strength, there was an innocence in Layla that Jordan couldn't ignore. Every day she tried to build a life in a world so far removed from her own, she carried the weight of her own fears, never daring to speak of them. She was fragile but not weak. She would go through the motions, pretending she was content with her new life, while the heavy burden of her own secrets pushed down on her chest. She never asked for this life with Jordan. She never sought out the luxuries of his world. She simply wanted to escape the nightmare that had once been her life. Her innocence was almost palpable in the way she saw the good in people, in the way she believed in love and kindness despite the cruelty life had shown her. Layla wore her vulnerability like a shield, hoping no one would notice the cracks. She didn't expect much from Jordan, not in terms of affection or understanding. She knew what kind of man he was. She simply needed him as a means of escape. But as time went on, something within her began to change. Jordan's coldness, his reserved nature, had started to chip away at her walls, and despite her best efforts, she began to care about him in a way she hadn't anticipated. Her emotional journey was filled with the quiet, almost invisible scars of someone who had lived through so much without showing it. In the moments when she would sit alone, looking out the window at the sprawling mansion, she thought of her family back home, of the small house where laughter once echoed, of the dreams she had once harbored. She often wondered if she had made the right decision, if this marriage, this man, was truly the escape she needed or just another prison with golden bars. Despite everything, Layla never gave up on the hope that someday, maybe, she could be free. But that hope was constantly overshadowed by the guilt of hiding her past, of keeping a secret so dark that if it ever surfaced, it could ruin not only her, but also the man she was now married to. Her life, like the village she came from, was built on hidden truths, truths she could never let out, even though they ate away at her from the inside. Jordan had no idea how much pain, how much fear Layla carried beneath her composed exterior. The sympathy she evoked came from the realization that she wasn't just a simple village girl trying to fit into a billionaire's world. She was a survivor, hiding her scars beneath a smile, afraid that if anyone saw the real Layla, they might not love her anymore. Her innocence lay not in her lack of awareness, but in the purity with which she approached life, even as she battled a past that constantly threatened to swallow her whole. She didn't know what love truly looked like, not the way Jordan might have seen it, but she had a heart that was capable of understanding and compassion, a heart that could love if only it had the space to breathe. The village girl, hiding her deepest fear behind her calm demeanor, was a tragic figure, torn between the promise of a new life and the haunting memories of the one she had fled. Layla's secret had been buried deep within her, but the weight of her past had become unbearable. One evening she sat with Jordan, trembling as she confessed, "I didn't just marry you to escape my village life. I needed to hide from something darker." Her voice shook as she revealed the truth. Her past was filled with betrayal, violence, and threats, a dangerous world she had to escape. Jordan, who had always thought of Layla as simple and innocent, now saw the depth of her pain. Her secret mirrored his own. He too had buried a painful past. In that moment, the weight of their shared guilt and fear hit him. Both had spent years running from their pasts, but only by facing them could they truly heal. Jordan realized that, like Layla, he needed to confront his own demons. This moral awakening wasn't just about Layla's truth. It was about both of them breaking free from the lies that had held them captive. Together they could start anew. And for the first time, Jordan felt the possibility of redemption for both of them. The evening was quiet, but the air in the room felt heavy, charged with the tension of unspoken truths. Layla sat on the edge of the sofa, her hands folded tightly in her lap, her heart racing as if it might burst from her chest. Jordan stood across from her, his cold exterior betraying no sign of the storm raging within. But as he looked at her, there was something different in his eyes, something vulnerable, an understanding that hadn't been there before. "I've lived my whole life running." Layla's voice was barely a whisper, but it sliced through the silence like a knife. "Running from my past, from the fear, the shame." Jordan's breath caught in his throat. He could hear the tremor in her words, the weight behind them, and it tore at him in ways he couldn't explain. He wanted to reach out, to comfort her, but the distance between them felt like an insurmountable chasm. How could he offer her solace when he had no answers for himself? Layla's eyes brimmed with tears, but she fought them back, the flicker of her strength still present in her fragile frame. "I wasn't just a village girl, Jordan," she continued, the words tumbling out now, too fast to stop. "I was running from something that could have destroyed me, something that could have destroyed us. I thought I could escape it, but it's always there, haunting me. And now..." Her voice cracked, and the tears she had fought so hard to hold back finally escaped, streaming down her cheeks. Jordan's heart twisted. Seeing her like this, so raw and vulnerable, was like a punch to his gut. For the first time, he saw the real Layla, the girl who wasn't just a pawn in his world, but a person with her own fears, her own pain. The weight of her confession hit him hard, like a wave crashing against the shore. He had built his empire on control, on hiding behind facades and manipulation, but this moment was different. It was real, and it was breaking him apart. "Layla." His voice was thick with emotion, something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. He stepped forward slowly, as though afraid to scare her away. "I'm so sorry. I never knew what you were carrying inside." She looked up at him, her eyes full of the vulnerability she had tried to hide for so long. "I didn't want you to know," she whispered. "I didn't want you to see me like this. I didn't want you to think less of me." Jordan kneeled in front of her, his heart aching as he reached out to gently take her trembling hands in his. He felt the rawness of her emotions, the fear, the shame, the regret, and for the first time, he saw the depth of the woman he had married. She wasn't just the simple village girl he had married to cover his own dark past. She was someone who had fought tooth and nail for her survival, someone who had faced the darkness alone. And now, in this moment, he realized that they were no longer just two strangers bound by a secret. They were two people, broken and scarred, yet capable of healing, if only they had the courage to face it. "Layla," Jordan said softly, his voice thick with sincerity, "you don't have to carry this alone anymore. I'm here. I'm not going to walk away." The words hung in the air, and for the first time, Layla allowed herself to believe them. Her breath hitched as a sob escaped her chest, a sound of relief and grief intertwined. The weight of her secret, the burden she had carried for so long, was starting to lift. And in that moment, as Jordan held her hands, she realized that she wasn't alone anymore. For the first time in years, she felt the possibility of love, of acceptance, of forgiveness. Jordan, too, felt something shift within him. He had always been the one in control. But here, in this raw, vulnerable moment, he felt powerless. Not in a bad way, but in a way that made him realize how much he had been hiding. His own walls, carefully constructed over the years, began to crumble. For the first time, he saw that true strength wasn't in control. It was in vulnerability, in allowing someone to see the parts of you that you had buried deep inside. As Layla's sobs quieted and she slowly looked up at him, her eyes filled with gratitude, Jordan made a promise to himself. No more lies, no more running. He wasn't going to hide anymore, not from her, not from his past, not from himself. They had both been living in the shadow of their secrets for too long. But now, standing together, they had a chance to break free. They had a chance to rebuild what had been broken, not just for each other, but for themselves. In that moment, as the tears dried and the silence between them grew softer, something powerful passed between them. A connection forged not in perfection, but in the raw, unfiltered truth of their pain and their hopes for a better future. It wasn't going to be easy, but for the first time, both of them felt the hope that had eluded them for so long. They could move forward, not as two broken people, but as two souls who had found healing in each other's embrace. And that, in itself, was the most beautiful thing of all. One evening, as they were walking through the garden, a man from her past, someone she had desperately tried to avoid, appeared at the gate. Layla froze, her face going pale, and for a moment, it was as though the air itself had thickened with fear. Jordan saw the terror in her eyes, and without thinking, he moved in front of her, blocking her from view. His body was tense, a sharp protectiveness flashing in his eyes. "Stay behind me," he ordered, his voice low but firm. Layla hesitated, but the urgency in his tone made her comply. Jordan's posture was rigid, his muscles coiled, prepared to do whatever it took to protect her. It wasn't just about her past anymore. It was about a commitment, a promise he hadn't yet realized he had made to her. The man didn't approach, sensing the intensity in Jordan's gaze, and after a few moments of tension, he turned and left. Jordan remained where he was, standing between Layla and the door, not moving until he was certain the threat was gone. When it was over, Layla looked up at him, her voice barely a whisper. "You didn't have to do that." Jordan's eyes softened, but the resolve in them never wavered. "I did," he said quietly. "No one hurts you again. Not while I'm here." In that moment, Layla understood. Jordan was no longer just her husband by circumstance. He was someone who would fight for her, who would shield her from whatever darkness still lurked in her past. And no matter how much she tried to push him away, he would remain determined to protect her, no matter the cost. The tension in the room was suffocating. Layla and Jordan sat in silence until Jordan's phone buzzed, shattering the quiet. His eyes darkened as he read the message. "We know who you are, Jordan, and we know about her." You can't run from your past forever. Layla didn't know the full truth, but she could see the change in him. Fear, panic, all the things he'd tried to hide were now surfacing. Jordan looked at her, his voice heavy. "Layla, this isn't just about us anymore. Our pasts, everything we've hidden, is coming to light." Layla felt the weight of his words, But then something shifted inside her. There was no running anymore. She stood, her eyes locking with his, and said, "Then, let's face it, together." The air around them charged with a new energy. It was no longer just fear. It was resolve, a shared determination. They didn't know what awaited them, but they knew one thing. No matter the danger, they would face it head-on, together. The suspense of their future wasn't something to fear. It was a challenge they were ready to conquer. Layla and Jordan, once bound by secrets, now stood free. The truth had broken their walls, replacing fear with clarity. Jordan realized strength came from facing the past, not hiding from it. Layla felt liberated, no longer defined by her past, but by her growth. Together, they were ready for whatever came next. The road ahead was uncertain, but they had each other, and that gave them hope. They weren't afraid anymore, knowing that their love, built on truth, was stronger than any challenge.